As I'm designing the Tabletop Adventure system, I have some more thoughts that I wanted to pass by you guys. This one has primarily to do with the moving arc concept that I'm calling it. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, but as you may know or may not know, Indiana Jones has almost no influence on the actions that occur during the movie, the events that occur during the movie. He goes through the whole movie trying to affect change, but when you look closely, and it's actually quite funny, there is no change that comes from Indiana Jones himself, besides making, young Nazi children orphans, basically, by killing their dads. But the whole storyline of Raiders of the Lost Ark could have just been filmed without Indiana Jones because he affects no change whatsoever. So, named after that movie, the moving arc concept of TAS would be the embodiment of a living world, so that as you go by day of your PC's actions in the adventure, time moves forward. And so the game is segmented in time elements, in days. And every day you go through a phase where you kind of sort of like do some housekeeping on the world. So the world is living and it moves forward. And according to whatever gazetteer you have plugged into the world engine intelligence, the way, as I call it, or just like a generic table that comes with the core experience, events will occur that take place whether or not your character has impact on them or has had impact on them so far. So that is not to push the players forward to be stressed about their experience or to have them gamify the entirety of the game, although there's a little bit of gamification in there. It is primarily meant to instill that feeling that the world is alive and can do very well without you. Now, if there are things that you are affecting, then of course those changes will occur in the world, as will the world offer you changes that you can affect. But sometimes there's just things that your character has nothing to do with, and so time moves on. And then these plot points, I don't know if you can remember the sort of the skeleton of Act 1, 2, and 3 with all these plot points that you sort of like jump between in order to complete an atomic adventure. Well, some of those plot points then get crossed out as time moves forward. So there's this little clock timer that basically goes through the acts 1 through 3 and actively blocks you from going to certain plot points, depending on whether or not they, they were affected by you, in which case they stay open. But if you were too late or you just didn't do them, you had no interest in doing them, they get blocked off. Now, again, this is not to pose some kind of like artificial constraint on you. Most of these plot points, I should say all of those, none of these plot points will actually have like a huge impact on the resolution of your story. They may just be side quests or things that you could have done or could have discovered. They're also not meant to be discovered by omission by the player, because if you hear that, for instance, a baron has died and has locked his vault with treasures halfway across the land, and it just gets checked off or blocked because you weren't there, you're on the other side of the country, it shouldn't be then all of a sudden an incentive for you to go and try to crack that safe. So the idea that I had in mind was to have just like keywords with a little bit of narrative that you may write, a one sentence, to sort of explain why that keyword is on your character sheet, what you have done, what kind of incentivized action you have done in order to gain that keyword. There should also be lock words, and lock words are nothing else than the counterpart of keywords, things that are offered to you that you can unlock if you have similar kind of keywords that you can associate with those lock words in order to unlock the one sentence behind it that tells you, for instance, about this baron and his keep. So it could just, the lock word could be something like baron, the Baron's name, for instance. You wouldn't know unless you were actively involved in the adventure somewhere else in the land near that Baron why this Baron's name is of importance, right? So if that plot point gets blocked off because the moving arc moves forward in time, it doesn't matter to you. You can just continue your business with your adventure. But the living world has reacted, and the Baron died, and now you can't access that plot point anymore. So a little bit more about the sentence and the sentences that you write and the sentences that you are given, the pre-written narrative in these atomic adventures, and the keywords and lockwords that come along with it. My idea around this is that, and now I'm veering off from the living world moving arc plot point discussion, but I thought this was important as well, because I feel like emergent story is something that I've come to terms with of liking. And in fact, I think it's a very strong aspect. It's theater of the mind, right? But I don't want tasks to turn into a solo journaling experience, and it shouldn't be, but it should still have something that you functionally can use within the experience, within the adventure, to write down. It shouldn't be solo journaling, because solo journaling takes you away from the cinematic aspect of having an adventure. If you are sitting there and you are racking your brain about what to write, first of all, that's not enjoyable, and most people don't like solo journaling because of that. But it also shouldn't be there in the first instance. You shouldn't have to write a whole paragraph about something and then look down at it and think well, that was kind of a useless exercise because no one is going to read this. I'm going to chuck this out. And what was the point of it all? I could have just made it up in my head. So I want to have that theater of the mind. I want you to have that adventure without fully having to write it out. But I also would like to have some kind of living record in your character sheet, or maybe adventure journal or whatever, of the things, the impactful decisions that you've made in an adventure. And so my idea behind that is to keep it to one sentence, and that one sentence is non-functional. It could be I looked up at the moon one night and I went to sleep because I was tired. Well, great, but that wasn't an impactful decision, right? A more impactful decision would be, for instance, that you had just fought off a bunch of ghouls in a cave because that was the only place where you could stay the night. And so you write that sentence down, I overcame, some undead horrors, and now I have a good place to rest. And then you get to create your own keyword. And that keyword could, in this case, be ghouls. Flipping it on its head, it could be a cave of wolves. And maybe you had animal husbandry or you had nature as a keyword already on your character sheet. And so the impactful action of the day was to make friends with these wolves, and you had a successful encounter with them. And so now they consider you part of their pack, and they share their cave for one night with you so you can get some rest. Now you get to put the trigger word wolves on your sheet, which is distinctly different than just animal husbandry and nature. Now, further along in the adventure, you come across maybe wolves again, and now you have as a lock word, and now you have that trigger word wolves. Or it could be coyotes, or it could be foxes, which you could try to manipulate with your keyword wolves and animal husbandry. Or it could even just be some wild animal altogether. That's where the associative link between trigger words and lock words comes in. But then the beauty of this is that whereas you started out writing one sentence that led to your trigger word can activate a lock word further down into the adventure where it becomes useful, or maybe a whole different adventure altogether. And that unlocks, in course, its own sentence with actual functional information about whatever it is that you're encountering at that point in time. So maybe you're tracking down the prey of some wolves that were hunting, and it turns out that prey was an important NPC that you were trying to find, and so you actually can relate to these wolves that the prey is no longer prey and that it's important to you, and you rescue the NPC, which is a major plot point, which maybe in that plot skeleton which I still want to call Schrodinger's plot skeleton for some reason, because you never know if a plot point is dead or alive until you actually encounter it. But then you can actually unlock one of those maybe acts, like the gateway between Act 1 and Act 2, because of such significance. Or maybe it's just another plot point that moves along and you've actually outpaced the moving arc clock that starts crossing off these plot points as it moves forward. So anyway, just some thoughts on moving arcs and on trigger words and lock words, and how I see narrative working in the tabletop adventure system. Thanks, guys.